Welcome to our latest edition of A Window into the Amherst Regional Public Schools. I'm Interim Superintendent Dr. Michael Morris, and today I'm incredibly pleased to have our interim principal of our middle school, Dr. Patty Bode, and our principal of the high school, Mr. Mark Jackson, with us to share a bit about what's new and exciting and continuing work at both of our secondary schools in Amherst. So welcome, thank you for being here. Mm-hmm. And why don't both of you, both of you are pretty well known in the community, but some people may be watching, maybe haven't had a kid in the schools in a while or haven't interacted with our schools. So I'll start with Patty. Could you introduce yourself a little bit to the community who may not be as familiar with you and your history with our district in multiple capacities?
Well, I've been in Amherst for over 30 years, so I feel really rooted and connected to the schools because my own kids went through the Amherst schools. And in the 90s, I was an art teacher, and early 2000s, I was an art teacher at Wildwood as well as at the middle school. So I was in the schools for about 16 years. And when I completed my doctorate, I left our schools to become a professor in higher education. I was at Tufts University and Ohio State, and I was really eager to get back into a K-12 setting. So I was very excited to receive the call to rejoin the school that really had shaped so much of who I am as an educator when I returned to Amherst Regional Middle School last year. So this is my second year. Great. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Patty. Mm-hmm. Mark?
This is my 14th year as the principal of the high school. I think when I say the high school, it invariably takes me to the fact that I just graduated my own child in June and who's now off to college. And that was certainly a major milestone in our family. But this is my 35th, 36th year in education, former high school, middle school history teacher, basketball coach, baseball coach, mostly in New Jersey, urban environments. So this is, unlike Patty, I've never done anything else except this.
Great, thank you so much. And many people, whether they have children in the schools or not, are very curious about what happens year to year. We do keep a lot of the good work that's going on by teachers, paraeducators, clerical staff, and our whole community moving forward. And every year there are some new things that we introduce for the betterment of students. So Patty, would you describe some things at the middle school that are continuing work that's really exciting and supporting students, as well as perhaps some new things that people may not be aware of that are happening at the middle school this year?
Well, in terms of new things, we're really excited that we're building on our pretty well-known world language program, and we reintroduced our Chinese language program. We had that for a while at the middle school, so now we've restarted it again. So we have Yiping Yan, who's an expert teacher of Chinese language, offering our 7th grade curriculum. And then those 7th graders, as they become 8th graders, will be able to move forward as we grow the Chinese language curriculum. So we're very excited about that, and that is new to this year in particular. And the other curriculum that's new to this year in particular is we started a dance program. So we have an introduction to dance course taught by Tracy Vernon, another expert and pretty well-known teacher because she's been at our high school for many years and deeply beloved by all students, even if they never took a dance class. She's done so much work in the community, and we're really thrilled to have her starting our dance curriculum at the middle school. So those are new in terms of coursework and paths of study, supporting our exploratories and world language. And then another new kind of event and resource that we're inventing kind of and building as we go right now is we're creating a maker space at the middle school. For many years there was a wood shop, and kind of the decades gone by, different kinds of learning and different kinds of hands-on learning. And as those different programs closed, we found a need to reinvent and rethink what we do throughout the day with our students to explore the multi-modes as well as to integrate the arts and academics and the STEM and STEAM. So our art teachers are actually taking the lead in helping to develop a maker space and working really closely with our science and technology and mathematics teachers. And we're reclaiming what used to be the old wood shop, but the wood shop's been closed for about, 8 to 10 years, I think, or I can't remember exactly how long. And we're reclaiming that space and using some of the equipment that's traditional to a wood shop, as well as introducing newer technologies. So none of that's open yet. We're working on it, and we're hoping that later in the year we'll be able to start having some courses and classes in there, and then by next year we'll have a full makerspace up and running as a resource space for the middle school.
Great. Thank you so much, Patty. At the high school?
So unlike years past, I have a story to tell about infrastructure. It's been a long time, I think, since the plant, the physical plant, has been re-energized. So we have a brand new gym, which we're going to dedicate this Saturday, while we induct into our Hall of Fame the state basketball championship girls team from 1993. And so it's just, if you had seen our old gym, and the contrast between what it looks like now is nothing less than stunning. So Sean Mangano, Mike, with your support, and our insurance company came through really well to enable this to happen. So while that was one that everybody was waiting for, it's also the case that our library, which I describe as the crown jewel of the high school because it just hums all day long, has really gotten a facelift. We got an anonymous donation of $65,000, and our librarian, Leslie Lamison, did very thoughtful work in trying to reconfigure the furniture in a way that met students' needs. So it's there was a nice article in the paper a while ago. It's on our website, but it really puts, in my sense, it really expands the capacity of the library to be an inviting place and to facilitate student productivity. Beyond that, so there's a number of things to talk about, but I would want to, in some ways, prioritize the Chromebooks, which I know Patty last year in the middle school piloted, and we're kind of building on her work and the middle school's work. But it's really, it's nothing less than a profound moment to talk about the fact that the district has reached the point where it has a very significant statement to make about the digital divide, right? We just handed out about 240 Chromebooks through the last couple of weeks of August and early September, and I went to 3 or 4 of those meetings where they were distributed, and it was very clear to me that there were people in the community for whom the receipt of a highly functioning laptop was a profound moment, right? And so I think they feel invested in by the district. I think the teachers are happy that they have a wider array of digital options. So initially, I think our emphasis is on executive functioning, making sure that everybody's organized and we're using the technology well, but I think it leverages a larger conversation down the road of flipped and hybrid classrooms, which without the technology had been a very difficult thing for us to consider. So I'm very thankful that the district has put us in this position. 2 other things briefly. We had a really significant design work in the spring and early summer by guidance counselors, ELL teachers, and our writing center person. So we put together what they're calling Step by Step to College, which is a coordinated, well-scaffolded sequence of experiences to take ELL students, many of whom are undocumented, to shepherd them through the college process. So in the past, it's been more of a one-on-one kind of 11th hour rush, and we're in a position to do this in a much more systematic way. So I'm confident that the level of support the kids will experience will be far higher than it's been in the past. And lastly, I just want to note, again, with the support of the superintendent and the school committee, that we have a student support and intervention specialist whose focus is on helping us take restorative principles and practice and drive them more deeply into the daily functioning of the building. So that's a path that we've been on, but certainly with this new personnel resource, we have a chance to really expand that work.
That position was covered in a prior episode of Window into the Amherst Regional Public Schools, so we thank Amherst Media for supporting us, and if you want to find out more, you can see that. Finally, the basketball court, which you referenced, Mark, I think it's a resource for the school primarily, but it's also a resource for the community because it is amazing, I would say, piece of artwork to walk into that space as compared to before. And thanks for your comments. I also like to thank Rob Mora and the town who came in and supported us as well, because while it is used much of the school day and often in evenings for basketball practices, it also is a very different experience for other community groups. I've already received a number of calls since it opened 3 weeks ago who want to have access and use of the basketball court at times when the school isn't using it. So I'm really happy for our school, but I'm also happy for the community as well. Turning to you all, people often wonder, what does a principal do and how challenging a role is it? I had a parent tell me today, it must be a really hard thing to be a principal of a school. So I was interested in you responding maybe to what energizes you about your role as principal of the middle school and high school. What's exciting to you about that role and what do you enjoy about it?
It is so multifaceted.
Yeah.
It's a little bit hard to know where to begin, but my first response when I'm asked about what I like about this work, or in particular this job and this school and this community, my most sincere and pervasive answer is I love working with the teachers and paraprofessionals and staff who are really top-notch, some of the best in the country. I would argue best in the world. Since I did have the opportunity to work outside the Amherst district in higher ed, teaching teachers, and do a lot of research in public schools in different places in the country, and work with some teachers internationally, I found myself in the decade that I was doing that work frequently comparing the professionals I was meeting to the professionals I had known in Amherst, and thinking about the way teachers develop curriculum here, and thinking about the way educators come together to meet such a wide plethora of needs in a classroom where you have true differentiation of really meeting kids' needs to do reading and writing and math and artistic expression and all the multi-modes of learning really well. So that's what jazzes me up about working in Amherst. And then in sort of the general sense, it's really a joy to be with middle schoolers all day. They're hilarious, first of all, and they're also really smart. And I love working with the middle of childhood, adolescent, to early adolescence to middle adolescent life, where you can really watch the human being go from a pretty dependent thinker needing a lot of help as they enter middle school to really hoping that they're ready for high school. And our work, we're such a unique middle school since we're just a 2-year, 7th and 8th grade, and watching that arc from kind of dependent thinking and needing so much assistance and really working with them to be an independent navigator of their learning and know how to access help when they need it. That's thrilling to watch that happen. So those are some of the things.
Thank you. And since both of you are kind of famously or notoriously early risers based on the emails people get or when you arrive at work, I know it must be motivating for you to get out of bed at the time that both of you do and get to work. Mr. Jackson, your thoughts?
If I had to summarize my thinking on, and I would say life as an educator, less so as a principal to start, I think the driving force is growth. I mean, kind of the cliched image is acorns to oak trees, right? And growth comes in a lot of forms, and after having done this for a lot of years, I still find it thrilling, right? And it, there's, the simplest form is physical growth. You see kids come back every year and they're an inch taller, and that's just, in and of itself it's interesting, but it's also a metaphor about them making their way into adulthood. To find kids as 9th graders who don't have skills of research and can't write a research paper, and to see them at the end of their sophomore year producing very sophisticated, elaborate written work, that's a thrilling thing to watch. And then on the moral, social, emotional side, we just, even in the first few weeks of school, had situations where young kids had difficulty kind of owning their contribution to not good events, and then finding their way out of that defensiveness and being able to name it. I mean, that's thrilling in its own way. So growth is what animates me. And when you're dealing with adolescents, it happens in multiple forms virtually all day long, it never gets old.
Thank you. You both spoke a bit about this, but what are some exemplary programs or courses in your schools that the public might not know about unless they had a child in the middle school or in the high school? It doesn't necessarily have to be a new thing. What are some outstanding programs that just maybe fall under the radar unless you have direct experience with a child in our secondary school system? Why don't we switch it up and start with Mr. Jackson this time?
So I'll start with the English department. So this is the 4th school I've been a principal of, and I have walked into book rooms in schools before and found a few dictionaries, a couple of bridged short story collections, and that's it. You walk into our book room and you find shelves and shelves of multiple copies of both canonical literature, more contemporary modern things from voices and genres and cultures from all over the planet. And that's just routine. It's just who we are, right? If you come to the high school, you'll never get anything abridged. You get really profound work by well-regarded authors, again, from a host of perspectives. And I think that's something that sometimes gets lost because it's not as commonplace as we might be interested in thinking. I think more commonly, our performing arts, our art department, the breadth of offerings. We have 6 ensembles: photography, ceramics, 3D art, 2D art, sculpture. If you're an artist, you can do art all year long. If you're an actor, you can act all year long. There are no seasons to those things. I really like our math program. It's a little bit, it kind of pushes people's boundaries in terms of what good math looks like, and I think it approximates a standard that the world will eventually catch up to. So I like the fact that we took that risk and put that on the map. Just more generally, I like the fact that one of the things that anchors the academic program is nonlinear open-ended tasks, whether you're in science, whether you're in social studies. Kids are asked to think and create in unique ways, and again, that's a fairly routine thing, and there's nothing really exceptional about it as you walk the building.
I agree with Mark. I mean, I think it's a hallmark of Amherst that we bring kids to knowledge through inquiry, and that's really exciting to me. In the middle school, we have less specific course offerings because we're a middle school model, so we're designed as teams. So you'll have your English department, math department, science department, and social studies working together and teaching distinct skills and, looking at standards to meet throughout those areas of disciplines while simultaneously integrating the thinking and the learning and the questioning. That's really exciting to me about middle school. But I do have a few examples that are fresh on my mind just because of walking through classrooms in the past couple of days. Our 7th grade science department starts every year with a study of crayfish. And I just love this unit, first of all, because the creatures themselves are so crazy looking and so kind of prehistoric in existence, and watching 7th graders being able to handle them and study them. And this is another example of a fully integrated curriculum because the art teacher created a video so all the science teachers can use it about drawing and about close looking and examining and kind of nature drawing and close study, which is fully integrated with the science teachers' work with scientific thinking and data analysis of quantitative data and qualitative data. And all the kids are producing these remarkable drawings that, is enhancing these multi-ways of knowing. So that's an example. Coming up next week, we have our field trips to Mount Holyoke, Skinner State Park on Mount Holyoke, and that's another example where you've got all those discipline areas working together, so kids will be engaged with visual art and scientific investigation and writing poetry and the study of the historic moments and the kind of geographical site itself of the Oxbow and Skinner. So it's exciting, and it's always happening. There's always something bubbling at any given moment. So I think that's important to know.
Our schools, like other schools as well, have the challenge of addressing a diverse set of learning needs. For some students, coming to school is a kind of naturally reinforcing activity where acclimation of knowledge comes relatively easy, and needing additional challenges what they ask for. For other students, for a whole host of reasons, coming to school lends itself to having more challenges in terms of acquiring knowledge and then applying it and interpreting complex information. And I think one of kind of the universal challenges of public education is how to address those, and then there's a whole lot of students who are in between those two extremes. How do you approach the task of addressing diverse set of learning needs and learning challenges? Because I think all students come with learning strengths as well as learning challenges. In a solitary school building where you have adults and many students interacting with content all day long. So when I stay with you, Patty, would you mind talking about the middle school's approach towards that task?
Certainly. So there's obviously multiple approaches for multiple needs. And I think especially at the middle school level, our teachers are particularly attuned to this. So it might be whether it's like an organic or diagnosed differentiation of a need, as well as just the different needs that come with the middle school child, who are all kind of growing cognitively and intellectually and creatively and physically at different rates. So a few things happen because of our team model. You've got the 4 core teachers who I mentioned earlier of the science, social studies, English, and math working together, meeting almost every day to talk about the needs of the kids on their team. So they have this really good angle of the multiple perspectives of what a certain student might need and how they're doing really well here but not here. So what's that teacher doing? What are their strengths? And then I think also the integrated approach and integrated arts approach provides all these different opportunities for students, and that's something we're building on and trying to expand. And we also have a lot of great experts in our building in terms of special education. We have multiple programmatic structures in place for kids who have really specific needs and might need extra supports. And those experts and our special education liaisons and teachers are meeting with our team teachers regularly. So people can have really clear discussions about, what's working well for this kid and trying to zero in and target whether it's skill-based or whether it's a social-emotional expansion of social skills and those kinds of things. So you've got the team model as well as expertise in special education, and then we also have a really strong focus on cross-cultural learning and looking at what's come to be called culturally sustaining pedagogies, right? Really looking at what does a student bring to us and what is their need telling us about also their strengths. So not only looking at there's a need, but also what are the multiple strengths, and that can often be, bringing something from home that we don't know about, that we're learning about, bringing languages, bringing experiences, and trying to build on that as knowledge. It's been called funds of knowledge rather than seeing that as something that we don't address, that many kids would have to leave at the schoolhouse door. So those are some of the examples.
Thank you very much. Mark?
I think the story for us starts 3 or 4 years ago, like on the exact date. So we had a faculty meeting where we had prepped children who had some identified disability to talk to small groups of teachers about when it goes well for them and when it does not, and what recommendations they would make to help it go well more often. And so kind of privileging student perspective like that really provided us with a very strong foundation to raise the question of variability, right? Which is, rather than assuming some midpoint in terms of what most kids seem to be able to do, to enter with the assumption that there is no midpoint and what there is a range. And so for us, that was a real turning point, to listen to really hardworking, earnest kids who wanted to do well and whose processing ability was slow, painfully slow, and sometimes. And if you're in a school district like ours is, where the principle of inclusion is unassailable, right? It's just the first place of the conversation. So we have, there are no special ed courses per se. Kids with disabilities take courses that are regular education in their conception. The question then becomes, so how will all kids make a run at what I refer to as high status knowledge? What instructional accommodations need to be made to keep those kids productive in that environment? So for the last 3 years, we've been working on making sure that faculty understand the concept of variability, that they have access to instruction about what high leverage accommodations are. And our goal right now this year is to finish that conversation and be able to say that high leverage accommodations have been infused in all instructional materials that give the best possible chance for kids, regardless of the challenge or the variability that they bring to the table, to be able to access the material and make a run at mastery. So I think, I think that's a very distinctive thing for us, because we have a long, well-earned academic reputation, and to marry, the commitment to rigor with what we refer to access, I think positions us to be in a defining place in terms of the overall profession, because it's the merger of those two interests that I think is really the moment in education right now. So our hope is, with the support of the liaisons, that we can say mid-year-ish that we have those materials fully infused, and I think that will be a significant statement for us to be able to make us an academic high school.
Great, thank you. Well, we're running out of time, so my last question, which is a brief one, is just if people see this video and want to find out more about the middle school, high school, whether it's just curiosity or they have a potential student that they want to bring, or they themselves just want to see all the words you shared in action, what's the best way to find out more about the middle school and high school, or to get in touch with you?
Folks can see our Facebook page. We have a new Facebook page this year. It's ARMS, Amherst Regional Middle School, starting with ARMS, and then Amherst-Pelham Regional Middle School. And certainly come and visit, give us a call. We have the school website. It tends to be a little bit more kind of officious in nature, and I think a little less rich into the depth of what you can learn when you come and meet with us, if you want to visit some classrooms or hear more or meet with certain teams of teachers or certain professionals in the building. So.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure this video gets up on that website as well, so that maybe we can get
Yeah.
more depth given your comments. Mark?
So in a similar vein, what I would say is that the easiest thing to do is to email me, and then what I would do is to route you to the registrar, and the registrar is typically the one who sets up tours of the building, finds somebody for you to shadow or prepare you with for the day. So yeah, we have lots of digital opportunities, Twitter feeds,
Right.
The district's website, our website. But I don't think you catch the flavor of the place unless you're on the inside, and we are certainly set up to enable people to do that who are interested.
My last question, just for Mark, because many people get your email address wrong.
Yes.
Would you mind sharing that? And maybe you could as well.
Sure. Right. So the standard in the district is last name, first initial. I happen to got here after the other M. Jackson, so I'm Jackson M.K. at arps.org.
And I'm Bode P at arps.org. So it's Bode, B-O-D-E, P at arps.org.
And I think people will reach out to you, and I'd love for more people to visit our middle school and high school and get to experience what our students are fortunate enough to experience, just incredible staff, faculty, and your great work in terms of leading both of those schools. So I want to thank you both for being here, and we'll have another episode soon, and thank you so much.